Um, Welcome to, I think, one of the most inspiring sessions of today, a look forward to the future of marketing to women. We've got an incredible lineup and some fantastic content, so I'm going to try not to talk for too long because you probably don't want to hear so much from me, but from our amazing guests. But I think it's really important to give you a little bit of context as to why we're talking about better marketing to women and why it's important to us. Kantar sees it as its role and responsibility to support the industry in being able to improve its marketing in a more inclusive way. And better marketing to women is a big part of that and an initiative that we have been supporting certainly for many years. And a lot of the work that we do actually does this very directly with certain groups. So we're very heavily involved in the UN Women's Initiative, and we provide a lot of the insights for that to try and highlight some of the challenges, both at a global level, but also at a country level. We're also part of the Unstereotype Alliance, which is a big part of the marketing industry, working with big brand owners such as Diageo and Unilever to try and really improve the way that marketing operates in a more balanced way. And recently we've put some thought leadership together, something called the Reykjavik Index, which comes out of our public division, which looks at, from a global perspective, the influence of women political leaders and the attitudes of citizens to women political leaders. Hugely important piece of research that's now also going to Reykjavik next year. And then some more practical things such as the Inclusion and Diversity Index, where companies can benchmark themselves based on the feedback from their employees and their management about how successful they are in managing inclusion and diversity. And it's been mentioned a couple of times today, certain things like Getting Gender Right, which is looking at gender portrayal in advertising, a very concrete way of saying our companies, our brands, our businesses representing people in general, but women within advertising in the appropriate roles and the ways in which they should be in order to build not just great brands, but also great businesses. And it was about this point last year where in the UK specifically, we took the opportunity on the anniversary of 100 years of some women in the UK getting the right to vote to put on an exhibition. Actually, it was quite a breakthrough thing in the centre of London, a curated exhibition on 100 years of advertising, which, trust me, was truly eye-opening. And you've seen some of it, I think, in the lobby as you came in earlier on today. And it really shone a light on the fact that there are some fantastic examples of how to do it and some fantastic examples of how not to do it. But the other thing was to show the progress that the industry has made over the last 100 years, and in some ways to admire it, and in some ways to be dissatisfied by it. And we set up something called the What Women Want Initiative, and a steering committee of some of the industry leaders in marketing and in business to support and improve the way in which the marketing industry shows up in inclusion terms, and specifically in the area of marketing to women. So you can see we have at least 4 of the steering committee involved in some capacity today, and 2 new ones you're about to hear from in a moment. And the mandate of the steering committee is to move from what was essentially a thing and a moment in time to a campaign to improve over the next 5 and hopefully therefore 100 years, where it becomes no longer a relevant discussion, marketing to women and in fact inclusion in general. And inspire by showing great case studies. Hopefully you'll hear from some people today who are making real progress that you can learn from. To support by putting things like insights, information, data, business cases, and facts and figures and ways to improve it. And campaign, things like today, things like being at Cannes. We were present at Adweek. Candice actually was at Cannes with us earlier on this year to try and raise the profile and get the industry on board in a way that it doesn't become 1 or 2 companies' perspectives. It becomes actually the industry's responsibility. So why do we do this? Obviously, it's the right thing to do, but it's also important for business. And actually, you'll have heard Brand Z this morning. And if you look at the brand value of brands that are reported to be either male skewed or neutrally or female skewed, there's actually £1 billion worth of difference in the average value of brands if they are more neutrally and inclusive or female skewed. So actually getting this right is not just a good thing, it's actually a good thing for business. So how did we move it on? We came up with the exhibition. We thought it's good to report about it now. What's going to be the future of how this industry is going to change in the context of how culture's changing And I'm going to hand you over to one of our cultural strategists, a real expert in this field, who's going to tell you a little bit about the study we did, the themes that came through it, and then I'll be back to introduce our incredible panel. So please welcome Harry Blanche Bennett.
Thank you, Bart. So when we came to selecting which images that we would include in What Women Want, we consciously chose adverts that were positive, progressive, and most of all, empowering in how they depicted women. But I'll be honest, we had to dig pretty deep to find those positive examples. For the most part, what struck us when we looked at the ad landscape through the decades was a dearth of empowering adverts. Often women were shown in stereotypical scenarios, performing very traditional roles. Sometimes they were completely invisible, written out of the narrative, or other times they were very visible, front and center of a campaign, but completely objectified. Now, times, of course, have changed since 1918, but as you can see from these examples, these are quite recent. Happily, in the past year or so, we've noticed the beginnings of a paradigm shift in how women are portrayed in the media. And it's a real shift of perspective that can be illustrated by quite a potentially surprising brand case study of Wonderbra. So their iconic Hello Boys advert from 1994 is a real masterclass in the male gaze. So here the woman is scantily clad, she's looking down at the ground, she appears submissive. She is very much an object to be gazed at, and the phrase Hello Boys really cements that positioning of man as the subject and the viewer and woman as the object. In 1999, it's a very similar visual, a bit more brazen, a bit more colourful and less classic, and the phrase here is, I can't cook, who cares? In 1999, this was seen as a boldly feminist message, apparently, because of its rejection of the trope of woman as the domestic goddess whose place is in the home and specifically in the kitchen. This struck us as at odds with how we think feminist values are today, and the visitors to What Women Want agreed with us when we asked them to vote on whether they found it empowering or objectifying. Then we fast forward to 2018, and here the image is pretty similar again. You just swap a blonde for a brunette, but it's the phrase here that makes all the difference and creates that perspective shift. We've gone from Hello Boys to Hello Me, so from a male gaze to a much more female-friendly gaze. Now, Bart spoke us through that data point on how brands that are more gender balanced in their marketing are much more valuable, and I'll just do a really quick case study staying in the world of lingerie for a moment to bring that to life a bit more. So Victoria's Secret, obviously a massive American lingerie brand, they deal in very traditional codes of sexuality and femininity. Compare them with Aerie, where they refuse to Photoshop images, they promote body diversity, and they are all about female empowerment. In Victoria's Secret, the woman is the object of desire, whereas in Aerie, she's a much more fully formed and empowered individual. Between 2015 and 2018, Victoria's Secret saw its retail sales drop by 15%. In the same time period, Aerie saw its retail sales double. So this perspective shift inspired the name of our exhibition, Hold Her Gaze, and our thought leadership, which sought to bring to life 6 cultural shifts that we identified, and we created the artworks along with Grey London. How did we do that? Well, we used a research methodology called cultural insight within the human and cultural practice here at Kantar Consulting. And what we do is we scour all of culture, high and low. We look at seemingly disparate cultural manifestations in the form of Netflix documentaries, magazine front covers, new podcasts, books, influencer conversations, and more. And we pick up on those threads and weave them together to build a picture of how consumer values are changing. And then we work out how that might have implications for our brands and our clients. For Hold Her Gaze, we examined the emergent dialogues around body neutrality, around intersectional feminism, diversity, and much more. So I'll now take you through each of the spaces. The first is called Uncover the Untold. This is an image of the globally recognisable Elvis Presley overlaid on the image of the lesser-known Sister Rosetta Tharpe. Now, despite being an influential force to rock and roll's greater good, including Chuck Berry, Bob Dylan, and Elvis himself, Tharp was all but written out of the history books. She was only inducted to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame 30 years after Elvis. So we wanted to create this space because of a widespread re-examination of history that we're seeing from all angles, where people are asking whose perspective we've written history from and where are all the women. We were inspired by films like Hidden Figures. So what does this mean for brands? Perhaps question where your version of history is coming from within your brand, category, or industry. Celebrate those female pioneers who've changed our world for the better. And look within your business at the women there. Are they being held back, overshadowed, or prevented from telling their story in any way? And an inspiring brand who activated in this space was Stabilo. They highlighted the remarkable with this campaign. So this is Lisa Meitner. She was influential in discovering nuclear fission, but it was her male peers who were awarded the Nobel Prize for that discovery. Our next space is called I Contain Multitudes, and it features fly posters of words, both negative and positive, that can be used to describe female behaviour. We wanted to bring to life a certain double standard when it comes to describing female behaviour. Some words that are used to describe male traits when applied to women are seen as negative. And we wanted to speak to the fact that throughout history, women have often had to adhere to quite socially acceptable modes of presenting and behaving, whether that's being modest, quiet, acquiescent, or nurturing. But recently, we're seeing this explosion in how women are free to present themselves. We were inspired by books like Shrill by Lindy West and The Rise and Reign of the Unruly Women by Anne Helen Peterson. And also by real-life figures. So Serena Williams was a big inspiration for this space. She occupies many different roles. She is an athlete, she's a mother, and she's a woman of colour. She also often faces much harsher criticism than her male counterparts do for similar behaviour. We were inspired by Mary Beard, the historian who refuses to grow old gracefully and who demands to be judged on her knowledge and her experience rather than how she looks. A brand campaign we really thought brought this to life was Olay's Face Anything. So they strike out the notion that when a woman appears as anything other than perfect, she is deemed too much. And in this case, they've taken a traditionally female trait of being emotional and said there's no such thing as too emotional, and actually today we could all do with a bit more empathy. What does this mean for brands? So go beyond narrow depictions of women and their lives. Embrace women that defy convention and live according to their own rules. Help explode the notion of what it is to be feminine, not just in appearance, but in behaviour and actions. And dissolve those societal rules that dictate how women should and shouldn't behave in the workplace as well, to ensure that women in your business feel they can show up authentically and be themselves. Our third space is called Beyond Diversity. This is a portrait of Sarah Jenkins, who's the CMO of Grey London. And this picture brings to life details of her biography. So the Cannes Lion that she won, the netball team that she played on as a student, and her hometown where she grew up. And really what this picture wants to bring to life is the fact that no one person should be a stand-in for diversity just because of their ethnicity or their age or the ability. We are all diverse. We were inspired to create this space because of the movement in the diversity conversation towards a more intersectional one. And the brand in this space has to be, of course, Fenty, who revolutionized the beauty industry when they launched their brand, which is made for women of colour by women of colour. The financial and cultural success was so remarkable that it spawned the Fenty effect, and lots of other beauty giants rushed to expand their foundation range. So implications for brands here: resist inauthentic tokenistic diversity that is only skin deep. It's not enough just to show people of different ethnicities in your adverts. You need to be giving them a seat at the table within your businesses and including them in decision-making processes, in product design, and in innovation. So strive to truly understand the experiences of your different audiences and then use these insights to shape products and campaigns around their specific concerns and needs. Our fourth space is No Man's Land. It's the poster for an imaginary girls-only skateboarding festival. We were inspired to create this space by a blossoming of women-only spaces and events around the world. For example, the Wing Working Women's Club, which started in America and recently has opened in London, and the Albright in the same space. These are subverting the paradigm of the old boys club and creating something that is for girls only, allowing women to prosper and benefit both professionally and personally. We're also inspired by new events and festivals that are cis men free, sorry guys, including Sweden's Statement Fest and Yola Dia, which are creating radically female only occasions. Our inspiration here is Budweiser for their multi-year deal with the Women's World Cup and their sponsorship of the Lionesses. So implications for brands: don't be afraid of creating spaces and narratives that are free of men. Foster the incredible collaborations and ideas that happen when women work together. And represent and celebrate intentionally single and child-free women. Now, this is based on the emergence of a new space that is around a no man's land, but it's actually the celebration of the single female as an aspirational status. That's driven by influencers like Florence Given and Chidera Egere, who produced a book called What a Time to Be Alone. Our next space is called Nsync. It's a piece that brings to life the revolutionary effect of femtech innovations. So apps like Clue and Natural Cycles, which are empowering women to take more control and make better, more informed decisions about their fertility and their healthcare. The use of symbols that sort of represent female reproductive organs, if you can pick those out, are to speak to this taboo-busting energy that we're seeing around the female body. So the body positivity movement has asked us to evaluate women's bodies in a different way, not just based on what they look like, but what they can do. Our brand here that we want to call out is Holland and Barrett for their wonderful menopause campaign. So they've cleverly played with the word menopause here to play with the idea that as you age, you get slower. It says menopause, these women are active, healthy and engaged. We had Roisin Donnelly, non-exec director of Holland and Barrett, on our panel at Cannes, and she spoke to the financial success and results from this campaign. So it shows that people really are ready to bust those taboos around women's bodies. So implications for brands: be bold, break taboos and speak to women in an honest and frank tone of voice about the issues that matter to them. Design solutions and products that enable women to take control of their lives in new ways, and ignore category conventions to truly innovate and deliver against women's needs. So this is what the US brand Thinx did when they created the world's first menstrual underwear. Instead of simply redesigning a tampon applicator, they completely innovated and created the world's first menstrual underwear. Our last space is called Truth to Power. It's a jacket decorated with pins, patches and slogans to bring to life this emergence and real revolution of activism that we're seeing amongst centennials and millennials specifically. We were inspired by Greta Thunberg, the Swedish climate change activist, and her Schools Against Climate Change. We were also inspired by Emma Gonzales, the young gun control activist in America, and of course the women of all different ages who spoke out in the Me Too movement. It's clear that women around the world won't be silenced anymore. They're speaking out and they want to make a change. Last year, a record number of women entered US Congress. So globally, women are leaning into politics and they want to revolutionize and create positive change. A brand that has great heritage here of speaking truth to power is Nike. They won a Cannes Lion for this Dream Crazy advert. However, even brands like Nike aren't bulletproof when it comes to purpose. You have to really walk the talk. So Nike got into a bit of trouble for a maternity discrimination case that was brought against them by one of their ex-athletes, Alyssa Montano. So that's our first implication, really, as a caveat. Caution is advised with brand activism. Brands really have to walk the talk and be authentic when it comes to their purpose. Another implication is to collaborate with the change makers and use your platform and scale to raise them up and amplify their voices rather than simply speaking for them. So that's the end of our 6 spaces. I hope that's provided you with some inspiration. I'll now pass over to Bart to chair our fantastic panel. Thank you.